Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What is the most insane, evil, funny, dumb way a spouse has tried to screw the other? My dad is a divorce attorney. His clients couldn't decide who would get the Labrador puppies from a new litter they just bred. The pups are worth $1,000 a pop. Well, they also hadn't been up to date on their payments. So dad brought a litter of 8 floppy puppies home as collateral for us to have, until they could negotiate the settlement. So much fun for us kids. Client: I'm a little short on money right now. Maybe there's some other way I can pay you. Slides puppy across desk and raises eyebrows. Paralegal for a divorce lawyer here. Our client told us he didn't clear out the marital account after the parties filed. Which technically is true, because while he removed $45,000, he left about $3.50 in there. I am not a lawyer but work in the court system. Once case that came in was a couple divorcing on mutual terms. The husband had one child with her and the wife had a child from the previous marriage. He agreed to pay child support for both children. I guess he really cared about this other enough to support her, even though it isn't his obligation. Judge signs the order. They go to set up the child support account and it gets kicked back, saying you can't have 2 accounts for one child. Turns out she's been collecting child support from the biological father the entire time and never told him. She basically tried to milk 2 fathers for one child, and the other attorney knew about it. Not my case, but during my first year of law school, lawyers from different practices came to give us a peek behind the curtain of different areas. The divorce lawyer told a story of rather well-to-do couple that spent months and months and many tens of thousands of dollars fighting over absolutely everything, all the way down to a single ceramic ashtray. He couldn't remember the significance, but somehow it had come through the husband's family. Even after everything else had been decided, they spent many more months, and nearly $100,000 fighting over just this ashtray. Then, after a court hearing, the wife finally won the ashtray. She promptly strode out to the white courthouse steps and smashed the ceramic ashtray. Left the pieces all over for the husband to see on his way out. Decided that day I would not be a divorce lawyer. TLDR. Spent $100K to win an ashtray only to smash it in spite. Once had a boss who had to leave his house for 6 hours while his ex-wife grabbed all the belongings she was legally entitled to. When he returned home, every knob and handle was gone. Door knobs, cabinet handles, drawer handles, anything that was screwed onto something and used to open it, she had taken. Every day for the next week he would occasionally yell out, "She took the effing knobs." My friend's mom did this when she found out her husband was cheating. In addition, all the light bulbs and toilet paper. Even the light bulb in the fridge. She knew he would come home from work in the evening and have to figure out what was going on. I am an interpreter who works frequently with police and lawyers. The most out there thing I ever interpreted in court went like this. Ms. So-and-so, we know each other for a long time, correct? Yes. As a matter of fact, we have known each other for 5 years, correct? Yes. And at the end of each and every meeting we had during the past 5 years, we always agreed on one thing, correct? Yes. Please, tell the judge what we agree on. It's not okay to break in my ex's apartment and lick all his cutlery. Yet, here we are, Ms. So-and-so. I died. I didn't handle the divorce, I handled parts of the aftermath. In the divorce, she went AWOL, was living in a truck somewhere, and just couldn't handle it mentally. He gave her 5 of his 9 companies. They were the ones that owed 7 figures in payroll taxes. He had made her the bookkeeper on paper. She spent decades trying to shake the IRS for the results. I'm a lawyer but have had a very limited amount of experience in divorce cases. The first case I ever worked, the husband shaved/waxed every single hair off his body in an attempt to avoid a court-mandated drug test. We had a guy at work do this. Shaved his whole body, razor burn on the back of his neck, cut up his elbows. He was a hairy dude. Then he failed the urine test. I asked him why he went to all that trouble, and he said, "I don't know, I was high." A soon-to-be ex-husband left his wife's prized koi to die on the doorstep of their house. Apparently the value of these fish, 6 in total, was over $100,000. She was, according to her lawyer, so distraught that she couldn't be in court. Only in LA. What the F? Is this not destruction of livestock/property and animal abuse? Koi are really long-lived fish and can become a bit friendly too. Yes. My local pet store has koi that come up to you and you can pet them, and they'll listen to you talk. Not my divorce, but my divorce lawyer told me about a case she was involved in, where both clients were so petty that they had to all meet to argue over literally every single scrap of everything. The final object that neither would settle on was a ceramic rabbit statue, a really generic one from Home Depot or whatever. Zero sentimental value, but since it was the final item, neither side wanted to lose the last thing, and they dragged it out over 3 separate meetings for this one thing. I don't remember which ended up getting it, but once they settled it and signed everything, the winning party stuck it on their lawyer's desk as a gift and walked out. They must have felt so cool yet looked so stupid. I wonder at what point even the lawyers are like, this is not worth my time despite what I'm getting paid. Just accidentally drop that shit so it breaks. My friend's dad Alan is a lawyer and does mostly divorces and custody cases. The state where he practices had a lot of mediated divorces. I guess they are faster and cheaper than the traditional route. He had a couple come that had already figured out division of property, custody, support, etc. Alan figures it'll be a quick afternoon and he'll be home in time for dinner. He's reviewing everything with them, and gets to the question of which parent should be called first if the child gets hurt or sick at school or camp. Well, for some reason this turned into a huge issue. Each parent wanted to be the one who was called first. The couple argued for an hour, for which Alan was being paid hundreds of dollars. After an hour, Alan suggested that they split, take a break, collect themselves and start discussions anew on another day, or maybe talk about it on their own and come see Alan when they figured it out. Nope, the couple insisted on ironing it out right then and there. They fought for 6 hours while Alan just sat there and listened. They refused his help, they refused to come to an agreement. By this time it was almost 8 PM and Alan said, "I don't care what you two do, but I'm going home to my wife right now." For some reason, that seemed to make something click for them, and they did eventually resolve it. Not sure why it took 6 hours and a couple of $1,000 to do it, but they did. Guess everyone has a hill to die on. Man, I'd love to earn money just by listening to idiots arguing. Articled at a family law firm, thankfully moved on since. Worst I saw was a decades-long case. Husband had been in a motorcycle accident, suffered brain damage, has severely limited capacity going forward. Got a huge settlement afterwards. Wife spent the next several years stealing the entirety of the guy's money and property variously by forging his signature or putting documents in front of him that he couldn't understand, and telling him they were something benign so he'd sign it. She then forged a bunch of letters from a tax authority, and convinced him he was about to go to jail and further convinced him to flee the country. He finally came back several years later to find out everything he owned was in her name, and one of the documents he was told to sign were divorce papers. Dude got left with nothing. I moved on before I found out how the story ended. Friend was going through divorce from insane husband. He had been texting her pics of the gun he bought and threatening her. Police were called. Nothing they could do because it was only a picture. He was staying with a secret girlfriend at this point. She allowed him to go get his stuff from the house. She was scared to go back in the house alone. I went with her. First red flag was he had changed the locks. So we waited for locksmith to open the house and change the locks again. Well, when the door opens, we noticed all of the furniture was gone. So we carefully went upstairs in search of her cats. The entire second floor was empty. No cats. No furniture. Even her clothes were gone. Come to find out he hired a moving company to pack and take everything, even the food in the fridge. Finally found the cats. He had taken them to another vet in town, and put them up for boarding under his sister's name, thinking she would not be able to find them. He was finally forced to disclose what happened to her possessions. He had them taken to a storage unit far away from the home. Divorce lawyer here. Spouse had been out of the house for weeks. She waited until he was on a business trip, came into the house, turned on all of the faucets, plugged the drains, turned off the furnace, and left. It was -10 degrees. He came back 5 days later. The house was ruined. The water froze and cracked the foundation. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but my parents got divorced about a year ago. My mum didn't want my dad to show up in court because he would contest, and then they'd have to split the assets. She phoned me and told me to put laxatives in his food so he wouldn't be able to make it there. Did you? No. She kept screaming at me, commanding me to, but I refused. It's one of the reasons that she hates me now. TLDR, my client's spouse accused him of giving his deceased wife cancer. I represented a guy who was on his second marriage. His first wife passed away from cancer. He and his kids were obviously devastated. My client was a pretty sensitive guy with a big heart. His second wife could be very charming, which was why he fell for her, but it was all a facade. Anyway, to make a long story about a lengthy divorce short, my client met a very kind and affectionate woman during his case. They really hit it off and were basically engaged, even though his divorce was far from over. The fiancé started health problems and was diagnosed with a form of terminal cancer. Somehow the second wife found out about this and tried to use the cancer diagnosis against my client in court. She developed this crazy theory that my client had killed his first wife by giving her cancer, and that he was doing the same thing to his fiancée. The second wife's attorney, who was quite good, refused to be a party to it. The attorney never addressed the argument in court, and didn't even ask the second wife any questions about it during testimony. Rather, the attorney informed the judge that the second wife wished to address the court directly about an issue. The judge allowed her to do so in a highly irregular move. The second wife told her crazy conspiracy theory to the judge, adding that she was certain my client had tried to give her cancer at some point as well. I wish I had an artist's rendering of the scene, capturing the second wife's crazy eyes, her attorney's look of shame/embarrassment, the judge's look of confusion/ennui, and my look of awe-inspired disgust. She accused her ex-husband of sexually molesting their children while under the watchful eye of the nationally endorsed social workers, who oversaw his contact with them, which was only required because he didn't have his own private accommodation at the time. She also said that his Indian flatmates were inherently dirty. After the obviously false child molestation suggestion, I warned her of the consequences of being caught lying about that, like permanent loss of custody. She fired me but kept calling back using fake names to try and obtain free advice which contradicted my advice, but everyone she called immediately spotted her. This was a long time ago and now I specialize in insurance litigation, which is far less ugly. This one hits close to home because it happened between my parents. We had a family friend who was a lawyer and my parents agreed that he would be the lawyer for both of them as a mediator. So, as the assets were being divided, my dad got absolutely slammed. She was going to get the house, cars, half his retirement, and an insane amount of alimony. To the tune of like $2,500 a month for the rest of her life. My dad has a good job as a municipal employee, but that was probably 70%ish of his paycheck. Turns out that my mom and the family friend actually conspired to rip my dad off and make it seem like that's what a divorce settlement looks like. And she was going to kick back more money under the table after the dust had settled. Dad just didn't know how these things worked. So, after some convincing, he finally went out and got his own lawyer. He got a very fair divorce settlement after that. Mom still to this day can't understand why we don't talk to her much. Personal experience. Unbeknownst to me, my ex was having an affair. I worked a lot of hours, so I didn't pick up on it. We had always dreamed of buying a house on a huge local lake to retire in. We literally started shopping for houses and even toured a dozen or so. We found two well within our budget, but would need to sell our house first. My wife convinced me to take out a couple loans in my name and get a couple credit cards, again in my name. Most of the bills were in hers, and the mortgage was in hers, so I did. I spent about $25,000 in credit cards and loans to fully update our house and get it ready for market. As soon as the work was done, She told me she was leaving me and wanted to sell the house. I'm going to school to be a vet assistant. My teacher is a veterinarian. She told us on Monday she's had clients bring their animals in to be euthanized so their spouse couldn't have them. Shake my damn head. I don't practice divorce law, but I did an internship with a family law judge in law school that involved me sitting in on a lot of stuff. One divorce couple came in because the ex-husband wanted to lower his spousal support payments due to his lowered income, great financial responsibilities, and the fact that his ex-wife was declining to seek paid employment, all of which sounds reasonable on the face. It turned out that while his income had been lowered due to cuts, his new wife, who technically worked as his assistant, and had done so prior to the divorce, was now making quadruple her salary, more than he ever had. He claimed that his ex-wife hadn't paid renters living with her, and could have money to survive if she charged them rent. It turned out they were the couple's shared 18-year-old twins who were living at home, having just graduating high school and were going to keep living at home while starting college in the fall. It also later turned out that he allowed his stepdaughter and her 2 children to live with him and his wife rent-free and paid for her college. His ex-wife produced evidence that he told his own kids to figure out paying for college themselves. He claimed that his ex-wife worked as a nanny for free by choice, and should be getting paid for work elsewhere. The kids she watched for free were their 3 joint grandchildren from their eldest child, 2 of which were severely disabled. He claimed that when he married his new wife, he gained over 15 new dependents, which was technically true, but those dependents were all in Mexico and included his new wife's grown siblings and their families, none of whom he had ever met. This dude was shocked when spousal support wasn't decreased. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.